You ever been in a struggle to the point where you were just tired of fighting? And what you wanted to do then was just to drift and drift and drift. I remember many times in my own life, I just felt like just drifting because I had done everything in my power, I thought. And I came to the place where I would just accept this bird in the hand instead of looking for the two in the bush. I don't know, have you ever been there to the point where you were trying to force yourself to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and trying to make yourself stay where you know you didn't need to be because you had come to the place where you just throw your hands up? I think somebody else here understands how I felt in my life. The attitude is, why should I keep trying? And what I have, what I do not have, why should I keep trying to expand my horizon? Why should I keep trying to move to the next level? I mean, I've tried and I've come against so many forces that I might as well just sit where I am and let the things go as they may. It is here then that he understands this, because oftentimes when the future is questionable, we feel as if we need to stay in the present, but the present always gives way to the future. And so God promises new creation of all things when I came to him in righteousness and peace. But I have a tendency to want to let everything go and believe that everything is going to be as it was before. And so I give up my dreams, and I give up my visions, and I give up my purpose, and I just wander around because I'm feeling like everything is going to be the same. Nothing is really going to change in my life. And that's exactly where the devil wants us, because once he breaks us into despair, then he knows we will not put any energy into making anything change in our lives. Because your mindset has a lot to do with the energy you put into something. And most of us begin to release our energy level whenever we begin to believe that what we're working with will never come to pass, because most of us don't like to waste time doing stuff that's going nowhere. The biggest vision you have does not come from you, it comes from God. And if it's a vision that comes from God, then surely he has to work it out. Yes, and you have to wait on him to work it out. And the best way to wait on God is to wait with praise, no matter what the situation is, no matter how difficult things are. That's the best way to wait on God, is to lift him up and to glorify his name, because that's what you were created for. And the promise of God will come to pass if you can just wait on God. You see, God honors us with his promises, but we don't believe many times that we're capable of what is required. You see, he honors us with his promises, and his promises are sure, but he involves us in the process because we have to have the trust in God, and we have to believe that God, if he promises something, no matter how dismal it looks right now, if I can just maintain my level of faith and maintain my hope, then I can get through the present circumstance, because the future has got to be better than where I am right now. So now whatever he requires of me, if he requires me to be upbeat, then that's what I must be. If he requires my praise, then that's what I must give him. I must not allow the circumstance to break my relationship with God to the place where I will not lift him up, but I will defy the devil in my mind, no matter how I feel and what I'm going through. It is Moltmann who said that it is the sin that most threatens the saint is the sin of despair. It is not the evil he does, but the good he does not do. Not his misdeeds, but his omissions that accuse him, unquote. They accuse him of having a lack of hope. And that's why he sits still and does not move within the powers that God has allotted him. He sits still because even though he has the physicality and the intellectuality, he does not have the psychology that God is looking for. And that's why God gives us this word, because all sins of omission have their ground in hopelessness and weakness of faith. Anytime you don't have the faith you need when you should be going forward and should be moving to the next level, you're sitting around waiting for somebody to make it happen for you. That's because you're sitting in hopelessness and you're devaluating your ability to move on a command of God. If you notice, even in Moses' case, when God called him, he was in Pharaoh's house and he knew Pharaoh, and after 40 years of being in the wilderness, he could have thrown his hands up and said, well, I'm through with it. But when God called him at the burning bush, God did not go in and mystically release the children of God from Egypt. He didn't do it mystically. He had to use Moses, and Moses had to trust God. And when Moses said to God, he said, now give me a sign. And God said to him, the sign is that you will worship me after you get out of Israel. I'm not giving you a sign before. The sign is that you will complete the assignment that I give you. I'm not going down there without you, but I am with you. If he was hopeless, he would have sat where he was and wouldn't move. But he trusted that God would do through him what God says. And many times we don't move to the next level because we sit in despair and we want to feel sorry for ourselves and have pity parties. But God is not going to do it for you. He's going to do it through you. And what he needs is a kind of mindset that says, if God promised it and commanded me to go get it, that's exactly what I will do. Oh, I feel the Holy Ghost. I'm going to feel better in a minute, I promise. Chrysostom, he says, it is not so much sin that plunges into disaster as rather despair. And it was Joseph Piper who in his works made it clear that hopelessness can assume two forms. The first form is called presumption, and the second form, of course we dealt with it, is despair. And both are sins against hope. Despair is the premature, arbitrary anticipation of the non-fulfillment of what we hope for from God. It is a premature, a premature, arbitrary, I like that word. It is without reason I have decided that God is not able to bring me what he promised he would bring me. And I prematurely and arbitrarily decide that I do not have the power that God has released in me to move to the next level. I do it prematurely because I don't want to exercise patience. And I do it arbitrarily because I'm not looking at the right reason. I'm looking at my circumstance, and I'm allowing my circumstance to decide the power of God. The circumstance does not decide the power of God. What you're going through right now does not determine whether God is powerful or weak, because God's power is independent of your circumstance. And you can't look at your situation and let it form how you ought to think about your God. You ought to look at your God and let him decide how you ought to think about your circumstance. I feel it here.
Still to come on Fresh Oil.
Anytime you stop expecting, then you're saying that I don't deliver, and I'm not the kind kind of God that does not deliver. And I need my people in the middle of whatever they're going through to look at the situation and say, in spite of where I am right now, my God delivers, and I'll give him the praise until it comes to pass. Hell then against the patience in hope that trusts in the God of promise. So what I do is ignore what God is saying he's going to do and settle for what I think I have to have right now. But settling generally causes you more pain than patience. We should understand this, because you get into something that God didn't want you to have in the first place. And in order to take you to where he wants you to go, he's got to get you out of what you shouldn't have been in the first place. Oh God. And one writer states, they demand impatiently either fulfillment now already hope, which is not hope really, or absolutely no hope. On the one hand, I've got despair. On the other hand, I've got presumption. So both in despair and in impatience alike, we have rigidified, yes, and we have frozen the true human element, because the element that I bring to the table is hope. The element that God brings to the table is promise. If he brings promise to the table, then I bring hope to the table, because I have to expect that he will do just what he says, and he will do not something that is on my level, but he does things on his level. And when he gives me a his level promise, I can't do anything but give him glory and wait until it comes to pass. I'm feeling better. God's gonna help me. Give somebody a high five and say, look for it. Don't stop looking for it. Don't back up and let the devil make you feel it won't come to pass. Don't stop looking for the best. Don't stop reaching for the best. Don't stop demanding the best. Don't stop being the best, because our hope is rested in God. It is here now that despair actually presupposes hope, in fact, because Augustine says what we do not long for can be neither the object of our hope or our despair. And what he's saying to us essentially is that we have quit hoping in order to protect how we feel. Because I'm saying, if I don't anticipate anything or expect anything, then of course I'll never be hurt if it doesn't come to pass. But what God is saying is that that attitude has distrust for me, because anytime you stop expecting, then you're saying that I don't deliver, and I'm not the kind of God that does not deliver. And I need my people in the middle of whatever they're going through to look at the situation and say, in spite of where I am right now, my God delivers, and I'll give him the praise until it comes to pass. He says that God had to arrange humanity and arrange creation, and he put it under, he made it subject to vanity, and that means idle or resultless, futile or aimless. It describes something that does not measure up to the reason it was made. And what happened was, when man sinned, creation now in its originality was to glorify God, but sin brought it to a place where God had to curse it and put it under vanity. He made it useless or resultless or aimless, and that's what sin does to a people's life, is make them aimless or resultless. So you live a life of despair going nowhere, a whole lot of effort without any end, and you go with all you got and come up empty. That's why the man declared that all is vanity and vexation of spirit, and that's what the promise of God brings you out of that aimlessness, out of that despair, out of being everybody's pawn and everybody's tool. Don't you know that people people when you don't have an agenda. Folk around you will have one for your life. Don't you know that when you don't have anywhere to go, somebody will take you along with them, and you'll end up with them where you don't want to be, and then you got to find your way back. But God said, I got an answer for aimlessness, and that's vision and purpose. And you don't have to roll around with everybody else. I got one for you. And if you'll just stand up and pick up your vision and declare your purpose and keep looking for God to make the way in your life, then the enemy will be defeated. I feel the Holy Ghost. Shake somebody's hand. Say, I don't need a car from you. God and I'll get my own car. I don't need to wait for you to get me a house. God and I will get my own house. I don't need you to start me a business. God and I will take care of that aimlessness. It's a curse to live a life going nowhere. And so the purpose was interfered with, in that a perishing and decaying creation cannot perfectly glorify God. And so he put it under vanity. You've got to understand what's going on here. I've cursed the earth because man has sinned, and folk won't follow me like they ought to. But I put the curse on them, but I put it in hope, because if they will look to me, then this that they're under now will not be their permanent place. Oh, I feel it here. I did not put them in vanity with hopelessness, but I put them in the circumstance with hope, because I had to curse man when he sinned. One writer said, God, not Adam or Satan. It was God who did it. It was not Adam or the devil. And Paul does not use the grammatical form which would express the direct agency of God. By him who hath subjected, but that which makes God's will the occasion rather than the worker, or on account of him. I really don't want to do this, but I have to do it. I really don't want to put you through this, but I have to put you through. But I've got you in this bad marriage with hope. I've got you with this physical condition with hope. I've got you in a job you don't want to go to, but I left you with hope that you can always get through this job. I've got you among some folk you don't want to be with, but I got you there with hope, because if I allow the circumstance to be overwhelming, it will intensify your power to look to me, so that when I bring you out, you will have a praise you couldn't have had if you hadn't been through something horrific. Oh, I feel something happening in here. There's somebody in this house God is talking to that's been trying to get through what's in front of you, and God said, I'm going to bring you out, and all I need you to do is keep on looking for it. When you get up in the morning, look for it. Just another day the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad therein. The devil is a liar. I'm gonna lay my hands on my own head and declare healing in the name of Jesus. Can I preach like I feel it? The supreme will of God is thus removed to a wider distance from corruption and vanity, because what God says is, you can't hold me hostage, because I can always look to the future, and I always have somebody in the midst of the great pain who can look to the future. So Satan, even though you foiled my creation and caused me to have to curse it, I will put hope in the middle of the curse. Woo, what a mighty God of grace. No matter what I'm I'm going through, he's got hope in the middle of it. I haven't changed your circumstance yet, but I got hope in the middle of your circumstance, which means even though it hasn't been changed yet, I still can get some praise out of you, because it is not hopeless. Shake somebody's hand and say, I will live and I shall not die. I'm going through a rough time in here, but it's not hopeless. The enemy's fighting me on all sides, but it's not hopeless. The devil's trying to blow my mind, but I'm not hopeless, because God has injected some hope in the middle of my circumstance.